and welcome to the PropTech Hot Seat on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Talon, the show where we explore trends and technologies driving innovation across the built environment. This show is brought to you in partnership with PropTech Ireland, the hub for innovators, investors, and indeed for industry leaders. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Crowley, co-founder and director of SymTerra. Sarah, it's lovely to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Sarah, you and I literally ran into each other last week in London, and I was so excited because actually we were recommended to reach out to you through your funder, Pi Labs, but also we'd actually been following part of this startup journey with interest. Of course, there is an Irish connection, so that's always important to state. But I'm really excited actually to talk about what you're doing, because I think you're addressing some of the problems that I've come across only in the last 24 hours across some of our construction teams. So tell us a little bit about SymTerra.
So SymTerra was born out of a basic problem of like, what the hell is actually happening at site? And has anybody thought about also capturing the subcontractors' knowledge in that? So SymTerra, its like whole ethos is to be, it's a communication and reporting tool with it's built to be quicker than email, better than WhatsApp, and less soul destroying than paper. So that's in a nutshell kind of what the product does. And yeah, it's a site communication and reporting tool that makes it as easy as possible for the teams at the coalface of delivery to capture and report what is actually happening, and then feed that back up into kind of your central system, so you have visibility, assurance, and ultimately commercial defensibility of what is happening and has happened.
Sarah, when you're speaking to potential new customers, do they immediately think, well, hold on, we've so many communication mechanisms across our current systems, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's within their BIM environment, it seems to me that there are lots of ways that they could be communicating and not using any of those sufficiently. Where does your technology layer into kind of the existing systems and the existing technologies that the better contractors would be using at this stage?
So I'm ex-Mace, and Mace they were absolutely brilliant. They didn't have anything, so we would just use WhatsApp, and there's a whole load of compliance and GDPR issues that kind of come for it, and it's great for like things like family and friend chats, but when you're trying to find the photo of like AHU 5 from 7 months ago to, I don't know, try and show the client that you did actually do it, it's really frustrating to kind of define. So we often say that, like, rather than, we don't compete, like sometimes people call us bottom up BIM, like larger client organizations, but essentially we are there to replace WhatsApp. Like, in around has been like, what? So the way that contractors describe it is like, imagine the best of WhatsApp combined with the best of like another kind of form builder tool, so something like iAuditor. And then what that allows is you to like capture both like unstructured and structured comms. And then that can like report back up into SharePoint, OneDrive. So we knew, because we all come from industry, and that's been like a really important to us, rather than compete with, say, a lot of the larger systems that maybe the tier 1, tier 2 contractors already have in place. It's like, this is futile to compete with them. There is already this top-down software. We're taking a different approach. We're going to be bottom-up focused, and we have to play well with these different systems. So if you want it in ACC, you have it, no problem. You can integrate with that. Your instance of SAP, SharePoint, OneDrive, Dropbox, whatever it is, we've got so many different integrations, but we just solve the communication bit down here. And at the moment, most of it's done via Excel, email, paper, and WhatsApp.
In terms of integrations, so not even thinking about the existing communications tools or the communication facilities that would be, say, in project management tools. So I presume your integrations extend to kind of the most popular project management softwares that people are using.
Yeah, and we sometimes, I don't like it, like, well, I don't like it, but we have to like push quite hard in that we aren't project management software. We are site communication and reporting like tool. Like, there's a lot of great PM software out there. Like, there is no point trying to kind of compete with it. So, we allow this, your business and the other businesses that you work with, so your supply chain and your subbies, obviously, to document and record what is happening, that can feed back up into these different like larger PM systems. So it could be Procore, for instance, which is one.
Excellent. And I suppose I'm always thinking when we're looking at new technologies, we're always trying to think, because there's very few companies that are starting from scratch from a technology point of view. Most of them will have had the experience of integrating some technology. And in fact, in a way, it's almost the holy grail to find a company that has yet to go on that journey, because then you can do something really good with the best of the technology and almost with a clean, open mind. Whereas actually, I find the people who started investing in technology, so those leaders from 2 decades ago, they're the ones that can be a bit sluggish because they've invested a lot of money, albeit a decade and a half, nearly 2 decades ago, but they feel like they've invested and they don't understand why the technology from 15 years ago isn't really doing the job today.
Yeah, well, I've had this on like past employers and their like timesheet and finance system, and they would sign huge multi-year contracts with like often like big North American suppliers, and it would somehow like make life harder, like, and it just, and you kind of locked in. I think there's also some frustration generally within the industry around software that has just let them down, where they have been burnt, where they've done heavy investments into different applications that haven't worked for them, where they've been sold the dream, but it hasn't delivered. And I think there is more of that around than people admit.
Oh, do you know what? I would actually, when I'm speaking to founders particularly, they would tell me that's the single biggest barrier. It's not about their technology or even convincing the people of what their technology can do. It's actually overcoming the fear of losing money again, because people maybe who have invested in technology that didn't do what it was set out to do. And you know what? Actually, we have a couple of almost red flags that we see now. So, for example, when we're speaking to PropTech or construction technology founders and they're not prioritizing integration, and usually the reason they'll give me for not prioritizing integration is because they believe our system can do everything. And they'll actually say that our system can do everything. So actually, when I meet a founder who says that, that tells me they don't understand how construction projects work, because there is no one. So actually, we've really tried to change the conversation in recent years to understanding the concept of a tech stack, and therefore understanding where your tools fit in that. So I love that you say to me, we're very clear in saying we're not a project management tool. We're a communications tool to make sure you get the best out of your project management tools.
Yeah, I think, again, software has not moved as quickly. And I think that is in large part is like there are these very large proprietary systems that lock you in, that like do everything. Where if you go to other kind of industries, they don't have that as much. But also, even if you look on your phone, like the apps on your phone, there's no one app that does everything. You go to the individual ones as required. But in construction, like the second largest global market, it's like, oh no, don't worry, there's one system does it all. And I just think, well, we know, not that we think, we've lived it, it doesn't exist. And it's dishonest to say otherwise. And
well, I think it's naive. I think it's genuine naive. And sometimes this comes from technology innovators looking from the outside in and seeing problems, as opposed to the innovation coming from within. And I back in 2015, 2016, particularly across PropTech, maybe more so than construction technology, we saw a lot of consumer-led innovation. So people who might have touched off the industry for one transaction, identified a problem and designed a solution around it, and then being really surprised that their good solution wasn't getting adoption. Whereas actually what we saw in more recent years is innovation coming from the industry. Now, I think there's probably a happy medium of domain knowledge and not being so institutionalized that you think the problems can't be solved. So I think there's a balance to be played out here. And that's normally where, if you have a startup that has founders with coming from different disciplines and from different industries, that can be really interesting. But that domain knowledge, the importance of that can't be underestimated at all. What's your own background? Have you come from a construction background?
Yes, in the sense of I grew up, my dad had a D&B like fit out business, so I grew up kind of around that. By education, no, but then by experience, yes. So when I finished university, I ended up in construction, from a, from bizarrely from an M&E perspective, an M&E healthcare fit out perspective, without having a degree in mechanical or electrical engineering or engineering, but nothing like no, nothing can stop you with a can-do attitude, right? And an ability to Google and search and ask, all the trades as many questions as one can. But
So
yeah,
what is your education?
so my background, so my degree is history.
Okay, so and now the reason I'm fascinated by this is you actually came from a family business of construction and fit out.
Yeah.
Did you ever, when you were choosing your career, did you ever consider construction as a potential career?
Honestly, no.
Okay, we need to dig a little deeper into this, because actually what you're telling me is exactly the problem we're trying to solve every single day. And for us, trying to make construction attractive to the next generation of talent, or to those at mid and even senior career levels who we need to jump over and share their multidisciplinary and multi-industry experience. And construction does a really bad job of advocating for itself and making itself known to be an attractive career. And yet those within construction will all tell you it's an exciting, it's such a it's such an affirming industry to be in. Like, it's the alchemy of seeing something go through a design process and come to life is really quite magical. And I think most people will have experienced the thrill of, passing up a previous project and being able to know that they played a part in that. And yet we're doing such a bad job of educating the next generation, or enticing them into the industry. And even you, coming from a background of it being part of the family business, you never even considered it.
No, not yeah, absolutely not. And then, it's an ongoing joke in the family. It's like, so hang on a minute, like, grew up, your mum was a nurse, so you could work anywhere, and your dad's in construction, and you're in healthcare fit out. Like, have you ever thought about that? And I'm like, damn it, no. But I genuinely didn't think about it. And it was almost by chance, if I'm honest with you, on a grad scheme and getting into it. And then once I started, I just loved it. Like, rather than doing like PowerPoint slides and it just not, you, as you say, like, you could touch it, you could touch it, you could see it, you walk away from it. It has a finish line that I love. Yes, that finishing line can be excruciatingly painful to get to, but it does have it, and it's so varied. And the people that you meet and the other businesses that you interact with, I just I don't get me wrong, it can also be, it has its less great areas, but overall, I just think it's an awesome industry. And I think we need to talk more about, and highlight the project highlights and the really cool stuff that people are doing every single day. But we
Oh,
don't.
honestly, Sarah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it is so exciting. And I think when we talk about the industry, particularly when it's done at an academic level or at a state level, when the government is trying to do it, they get too much into the weeds. They talk about the journey to become whatever you're going to become. But they never talk about the exciting projects that you're going to influence and be influenced by. And what you consider to be random, I don't think is random at all. I think there are forces that influence us along the way, and then that those influences really only manifest when you see the outcomes of it. And the outcome
Yeah.
was the fact that you did end up in fit out. And the healthcare, that might be just absolutely coincidence, but that's a very technical form of healthcare. So actually, when you tell me you've come from that background, that to me doesn't feel like the traditional construction either. So I would have assumed from outside of it that M&E healthcare fit out in recent years would have been more at the cutting edge of construction and construction technologies, and therefore construction communications. Was that not your experience?
No, it's the opposite. I just lived and
Really?
died by like Microsoft Excel and then email, and if you were lucky, like a PDF attached. And that's one of my bugbears. I felt like the more senior you got, the more admin you did. And then like my husband, who's Irish, he comes from a very different background in construction. But I remember one day saying to him, I was like, I remember being promoted, and I was like to a senior project manager, and I'm like, I've like turned into just a glorified postbox. And I was like, actually, it's taking me away from what I enjoy and, you know, why I got into it. And I was just like, why have I got more paper and way more admin? I was like, I didn't join the industry to be doing admin. And anyone who's worked with me knows that like admin is not my area of interest.
Yeah, but not only that, but actually, I think there are many people listening in today that will identify with what you're saying, or it'll really resonate there. Like the more senior you get, the more admin. And actually, that admin, if done inefficiently, or you know, you're essentially duplicating work that existing tech could be doing, then actually you're taking away a very senior skill set from an industry that needs it right now. We need it on and off site at project level. We don't need it
Yeah.
necessarily pushing piece of paper that technology could be doing.
No, and it's not, there's so much, and then now it feels like there is so much technology out there, but none of it reflects how the industry actually works. So as I said, like I remember before we joined, like I thought that as like advanced construction technology was like maybe you got P6 Primavera if you're on a big enough project, or if you were like maybe on an mega infrastructure you got Project Wise, or if you were really lucky Aconex. So for the rest of us there was nothing kind of around. And I just thought on my last project, I was meant to do computer science at uni and didn't, but I've been coding from a really young age. So it was then that I was just like, sod this, there's a better way of doing it. Just built like a very crude mobile app to capture like all, because it was a refurbing 3 ICU wards, and that's what motivated me. Was the pain on this project was so high that I was just like, sod it, I'm going to do something. I couldn't see anything, thought sod it, built something, and then that was like version 1 basically, and then the subbies used it as well, and I was like, oh great. And that was just to solve the pain on the project that I was on.
I love that. Is the absolute epitome of industry-led innovation. So I absolutely love that. So 2 things you mentioned there. First of all, you got the subbies to use it. How? Because that's one of the challenges that we have when we're integrating new technologies on site.
So it was built like with them. So like I remember it was, and then I can go into this kind of more. It wasn't
Please,
on
yeah.
this site, but I remember on a later one on like version 2, and they were like, for those who can't see me, I'm holding my hands up, but I don't come from the tools and I have quite small dainty fingers. But like even around like the buttons need to be bigger. But one of the things like with them was just around like just speaking to them around it, and like their interest on this project where I first started was like, we were dealing with so much change on a like, it felt like on an hourly basis. And to evidence like our compensation events on the contract that we were on, we needed to have like an evidence of what it was. So their incentivization was to also fill in these, like to document like photos and text and around capturing it in real time, so they could then attach it to their payment claims. And we had like therefore just having a better audit trail, rather than having like, you know, the meetings where we would then at the end of month be like fighting over who's dot what, or trying to be like, no, but you haven't finished it. And they were like, but I have finished it. And it would be like, well, that part of the ceiling is already back up, so we can't go check it. So they were they were very much part of it. And it was in making sure that like, does it also work from them? And what is their motivating factor as well? And then once they started using it and they got that they were being paid quicker, and there was less time spent not arguing, but you know, having discussions around claims and payments and stuff like that. It just smoothed everything kind of out.
Well, I think actually you probably could have stopped there if they got paid quicker, because actually that's a really good motivating tool. But I'm also conscious of, say, for example, one of the kind of most important things that modern project management tools integrate or introduced was document control and version control. So when you're integrating in with other platforms, how do you ensure that you're consistent around document and version control, because that's such a key part of construction. If you want to drive efficiencies, getting rid of that particular inefficiency is a huge step forward.
Yeah, so every report that on any piece of comms on SymTerra, they all have a UID, like a unique identifier. And I heard someone once, like an investor talk, I was like, oh, it's like on the blockchain. I'm like, I mean, you could call it that, but we'll just stick within construction, just being like, just serve the lowest common denominator. It's a unique ID. And then that making sure that is unique and that it can stand up. So with one client, it when it goes wrong and you end up in arbitration, it is not fun, and whoever has the most information typically wins. So we knew as well, coming from industry, that this ID has to be really important. And so if someone has edited it, you've got everything's in UTC from a time perspective, and it has, as I say, this unique ID. That was like at the bare thread of what this system had to happen. In terms of version control, we'll feed into a document management system, and then those reports are fed up in terms of like the report name and the date and time, and they will feed into the relevant project folders, or how that project's been set up, that's specified to us. So we are a document management system, and each project and each business and each client will do it slightly differently. So what we've always advocated for is to use open data standards. So, and that also that any of the communications and comms and reports that are done, they belong to that organization, and they can get it out in the most basics of formats, in the sense of like, and I'm talking really basic here, like PDF, CSV, JSON, JPEG, formats that have been around for an inordinate amount of time, and that will survive in like 100 years time. And that then also makes it much easier to do the integrations. I could talk about this at length, but I think open data standards and feeding up into these different document management systems is really important. However, to be clear, we have not solved the version 2 final file format on that's controlled by somebody else. We've just got in the sense of our unique ID, that's how we found it.
Well, the unique ID, the UID you're describing there, does actually sound like the principles of blockchain technology. And I just wonder, as we're starting to see blockchain creep into construction, and I know the ATU together with Futurecaster in Ireland are actually doing some really interesting work here, exploring use cases, particularly across MMC, but also across traditional construction. But there were so many use cases here, and actually one of them is speeding up payments or taking away the obstacles that delay payments. And but actually it occurs to me that version control is a really key part of where blockchain might play a part. But so I think that's really interesting to see. Is that something maybe that you're looking at developing further? So in terms of your technology, because I'm conscious that you only started this in 2020?
Yeah, and it only, in 20, and that was part-time. So it really got going in 21. That's when we had reached like a threshold where it's like, all right, like I did, I wasn't doing contracting work anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But that's a really short period of time. So actually, where are you in terms of, you talked about how version 1 and version 2 of the app were kind of maybe more crude, but they were obviously getting the job done, which we like. That's the whole concept of a MVP. But where are you in terms of the vision that you have for this product, or is that something that just keeps evolving?
I think so. We are revenue generating. We've got 160 different businesses using it in the UK and Ireland, because they're our domestic markets. So we very much have we're a commercially viable product that's doing very well for itself. So we kind of were there, and we're at an interesting point of around like, what do we do next, if I'm honest? So it's a nice position to be in. But I see some people be like, oh yeah, the product's built. Yes, we have a product that's built and it's working, but even like Salesforce, like these behemoth like Microsoft, they're still refining their products every day. Like it's never done. And we're really close to, we establish like user champions very early, and we do that in many different sorts of ways. But even like push notifications on mobile comes out on Tuesday. We had like one version of it, and then there's this individual called Bear who led it and has driven it for for a good few months, and it's come out. But we name these features after these individuals, and okay, it's like and we obviously have to make sure that these features are applicable to all clients, but we engage with our users all of the time in order to like refine and shape so we can build the best possible product and keep winning, because once you've just built something, you know, great, but you're always still refining it to make sure that like it's something that's going to keep growing with that business, and as you grow and, you know, as I say, have the best possible product.
I think we've given the industry enough. I want to share some of your journey with the founders who might be listening in here today, because it mightn't feel like it to you, but you've hit some really big milestones very quickly. And I know as a founder, it won't have felt quick to you, but objectively, you have done that. So I want to give maybe founders a little bit of insight into this before we finish up today. So let's wrap up the industry piece here. How can site teams get in contact with you if they want to explore this technology further?
Just drop us a line on our website, which is SymTerra.com, and just you've got our, but we're very easy to contact, and those for the Irish that contact us, I promise you will get the Irish person, as you can tell, and here I am not, but half of the team is Irish, so I promise you an Irish person.
Well, I don't think they'll mind that, as long as you promise them a discount. They won't mind what nationality they're dealing with. But just to let people know that it's SymTerra is SymTerra. So just if you're looking for that, and reach out to Sarah and the team. Now for the founders, because this is part of the journey that I'm really blown away by. That, you know, you had this idea to solve a problem in response to a pain you were having on a project. So that's what we see as kind of the pinnacle of you know, industry informed and industry led. So we love to see that. But that was only in 2020, and you were still working part-time up until 2021. Talk to me about how you funded this. I know you did a lot of the early work yourself. For how long did you bootstrap?
We bootstrapped for just over 18 months. And that was like we were so motivated on the pain point, and we had the early proof points as well, and we were still kind of shaping it and getting it kind of developed and refining, and it was being used. So I was like, okay, well, we have something. But I also just didn't know anything about the investor landscape, being honest, as well. I think now it's in the market, the fundraising market has changed so much, but I think there is an inordinate amount of value in initially like bootstrapping a business. I think it keeps you more lean, and I think the product is so more closely kind of refined that I think it does help you. But it is really hard, and I saved for a really long time in order to do it. Like, and people say, oh, why didn't you just get like a family and friends round? And I hate it when people raise it, because I'm like, I don't come from a background that has like family, like my family, like even my parents didn't have like a spare 15K or whatever to like put in. It was like, and they were like, we support you and we love you, but like that's up to you. That's your choice now. Like that's not us. So, you know, I saved for a really long time, and made many wrong turns, but sort of then got there. And a real kind of change piece was for me was I got into Google startups, and it was then at that point getting in with them and then having that more framework kind of around me that made all the difference. And then being around other startup founders at different points in the journey I was just like a sponge for the information. And, you know, coming from a background where you just, you know, I loved what I was doing, but it was very obviously specific to just construction. Like I had no idea what a VC was, for instance, or what a pre-seed or a seed, you know, Series A. It was like, I don't know, which now probably seems naive. That is the honest truth of where I was.
No, I don't think it sounds naive at all. Quite frankly, hearing you talk about the family and friends around, not only does that resonate with me, do I identify with it, but actually I think the whole presumption of a family and friends round is so deeply rooted in privilege that the people talking about it don't even see how deeply rooted in privilege it is. But also I think it smacks of the bro culture that we've been trying to move away from in tech development. And I think actually, if anything, you describe maybe your lack of knowledge of the wider kind of startups and funding ecosystem as naive. I don't think so at all. I would imagine that when the fundraisers met you and they thought, here's somebody who's coming with deep industry knowledge, deep domain knowledge, and able to code, and has the ability to identify a problem, you know, that has yet to have a solution. So actually, from that perspective, I would say they were greeting you with open arms, which we know is because that's just genuinely so difficult. And the fact that you were so motivated, and that for 18 months you drove this forward on your own resources because you were so motivated to solve the problem. When you were pitching this to initial investors, the fact that you had actually developed kind of two versions of an MVP and used it in the wild, in real life, was that well received? Did that make a difference?
Yeah, so I think this is really important if you want to raise, in the sense of like, where do you, some different investors want to see different things, even within like the pre-seed to the seed. So let's just call it early stage. Even in early stage, different funds will have different criteria that they want to meet. So like Pi Labs talk about this quite openly, and the most kind of open about it. They want to see, that's really important to them, to see that kind of proof point. They don't mind if it's really early stage, if it's proof of concept, but they want to see that sort of traction, where there are other funds that are like happy with like, you know, a PowerPoint presentation and strong conviction.
Yeah, to be honest, if it's just strong conviction on a PowerPoint presentation, it better be a really good PowerPoint presentation. That's all I can say. Okay, Sarah, before we finish up today, what bit of advice would you give to founders across the prop tech and construction tech space who might be today where you were in 2020? What piece of advice would you like to give them, or what might have benefited you to know in 2020?
I think speaking to somebody that's gone through it, that can is really helpful, and getting more of kind of what I would call the honest truth of their experience kind of off of it. I think that's very important. It's very helpful, or enlightening. I'll go as far as to say it's enlightening. And I would also think about, do you need to raise? And I would say that like, we've grown up on the sense of like, even with like things like Silicon Valley, and we see, you know, and there is a lot of the, you know, you see a lot of press around, like, I find it personally quite annoying when I see someone, it's like someone's just come out of Stanford with a PowerPoint presentation. They're like, I raised 20 million. And I'm like, it took me ages and it was hell. And that's not my experience. But like sometimes then you measure yourself against that yardstick, and it's like, I have a working product. I come from industry. I've lived it. And then how's that getting funded? So I think there's something to be like, don't use that as a benchmark to compare yourself. If you do, there's multiple routes of different funding. So I think don't compare yourself. There are different routes of funding, and the landscape has changed from what it was like even when we raised. It's a different world now. I personally think that if you have a product that has where you come from industry and it has some early proof points of engagement, I think that's going to set you up in better stead, because there is less capital around now. So it's like, okay, well, who is the real deal? Rather than solutions looking for problems, people who are applying technology to solve real problems, I think they're the ones. But yeah, ultimately, it is much harder, in my experience, than people let on. Find someone, and if anyone does want to reach out to him more, I'm happy to kind of talk about it, but find someone that's kind of as close as you can. Even if it's in like a different vertical to you, I think it's still so useful just to talk about it, because I think there's a lot of jazz hands out there around how easy it is and how you can do it. And there's a lot of consultants peddling it, but actually like the lived experience is very different. So I think my greatest advice is like, find someone that you can have a good, honest chat with and a drink.
Yep, I love it. And look, the lived experience, that's where you're at. You won't find any jazz hands talking about fundraising on the prop tech hot seat. There's really nobody we've spoken to who has found it that easy. We haven't had any Stanford graduates get 20 million on bottom of a deck. So No jazz hands here, but Sarah, that's so well articulated and some really great advice. And very best of luck to you as you continue on. Because I do appreciate that it is quite early stages, and even though your market traction has been amazing, I think you're right. The product will continue to evolve because we're seeing huge changes across construction at the moment, whether it's traditional or MMC. So actually, it's really exciting to think that there's a product that is capable of evolving along with the industry and serving the industry like that. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your journey and your experience, and also the offering of SymTerra with our audience today.
Thank you so much.
That was Sarah Crawley, co-founder and director of SymTerra. And my thanks, as always, to producer Caoimhe Scully and to Katie Talon and to the audio team at Hear Me Roar Media. Before we go, just a special word of thanks to our sponsor, PropTech Ireland, for supporting the podcast and for making these conversations possible. And thank you indeed for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the PropTech Hot Seat. In the meantime, please be sure to check out all of the other Irish and international real estate and construction shows here on iPropertyRadio.com.